Hello there, webinaries, and thank you for coming to our workshop, The Future is Now, Enabling Immigrant Youth Workforce Inclusion. Our session today examines ways to improve the labor market outcomes of immigrant youth, who are, on a whole, lag behind their Canadian-born peers despite having higher levels of educational attainment. Focusing on solutions, we'll be tackling this issue from many angles today, including integrated learning, which we'll learn about from Teresa Jones, the coordinator of programs and policy at World Education Services. We'll also learn about the role of post-secondary institutions from Sarah Anderson, a career consultant at Ryerson's Ted Rodgers School of Management, and Prabpreet Basi, who's a student there. Next, we'll hear about how to successfully engage employers in this conversation from Denise Alejo, the Senior Vice President, Programs and Partnerships at Empower Canada. And lastly, we'll learn about opportunities in youth entrepreneurship from Juanita Lee Garcia, the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Marketing at Venture for Canada. Please do pose any and all questions that you have in the chat as we go along, and I'll facilitate a discussion amongst all speakers in the Q&A portion to be held at the end of all presentations. We hope that you leave today's session with some new ideas on how to support the economic empowerment of immigrant youth, a key demographic in our now and near future workforce. And with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa Jones from World Education Services for our first presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Solid Foundation, Expanding Access to Work Integrated Learning Opportunities. My name is Teresa Jones, Program and Policy Coordinator at World Education Services, and I'm excited to be co-presenting today with a dynamic group of key stakeholders in immigrant youth workforce development, who you will of course meet later on in the session. As members of the National Roundtable on Immigrant Youth Workforce Development, this session will provide unique insights from employers, service providers, and post-secondary institutions on how to drive change, create impact, and support positive long-term employment outcomes and the economic empowerment of immigrant youth. I'll be sharing perspectives on leveraging youth talent and success through work-integrated learning opportunities, not only as a stakeholder, but also as a second-generation immigrant youth having recently gone through the transition from education to full-time employment post-graduation. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that today I'm presenting from Toronto, land that is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, that is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I recognize and honor the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples here on Turtle Island, and that it is a privilege to live and work on this land. So I just want to do a little bit of context setting here and introduce WES and who we are as an organization. For over 45 years, WES has dedicated resources towards advocacy and social impact efforts that facilitate the economic and educational mobility of immigrant populations. Over the years, increasingly younger immigrant populations are arriving in Canada and utilizing our credential assessment services that would allow them to transfer their key skills and certifications garnered internationally to the Canadian landscape. Based on the stats drawn from our applicant base, interventions for workforce development support would be needed, especially among individuals who are 17 to 30, a range that would cover youth entering post-secondary education and transitioning into the labor market. So who are immigrant youth in Canada? When considering youth, varied definitions exist across bodies of research and policy. For example, Stats Canada looks at youth that are age 15 to 29, with some reports classifying young adults as 15 to 24. Some research considers the experiences of youth that are up to age 35. This may be due to the growing trends of older young adults choosing to continue education or reside with parents, where there may be delays in their official transition into the workforce. So as mentioned, WES, we're typically looking at youth that are age 17 to 30. And when referring to immigrant youth, we're considering first and second generation immigrants, refugees, and international students. These youth come from diverse backgrounds and experiences where their unique perspectives must be highlighted to inform future solutions. More recently, however, socioeconomic impacts of the pandemic have compounded existing challenges for youth in Canada, immigrant youth in particular. Research has demonstrated that despite higher levels of educational attainment, as mentioned, these youth appear to fall behind in the critical years between their studies and employment post-graduation, with heightened challenges in long-term labor market inclusion. And we're hoping to present work-integrated learning as one of the possible interventions for these youth. At this point, I would like to bring to your attention some key stats on youth and the labor market in Canada. Approximately 35% of all newcomers arriving to Canada are under the age of 25. At the height of the pandemic, youth made up roughly 12% of the Canadian labor market, while accounting for nearly a quarter of all jobs lost nationally. This created an even more volatile situation for immigrant youth who were already at risk of working lower wage and lower skilled jobs. Research is still emerging on recovery. However, we are learning that immigrant youth, despite the challenges mentioned, demonstrated significant resilience and are bouncing back from initial shocks to education and employment levels. So the gaps that we're seeing in employment rates do appear to be narrowing over time. And I just want to spotlight a few of these stats. As of January 2022, labor force survey data indicates that the employment rate of immigrant youth aged 15 to 24 years old has recovered beyond pre-pandemic levels, while that of the Canadian born youth remains slightly below the pre-pandemic level. Employment rates among many visible minority groups, including Southeast Asian, Black, and Filipino Canadians, rose markedly throughout 2021. Among all levels of education, irrespective of immigration status, university degree holders had the highest employment rate before the pandemic, and this trend continued throughout. Additionally, various pathways have emerged to addressing existing concerns and advocate for immigrant youth workforce development. I would like to highlight some of the key actions taken by WES in this direction. First, the National Roundtable on Immigrant Youth Workforce Development. This is co-convened by WES and additional stakeholders in youth, policy, and employment to ideate and surface solutions toward the sustained labor market inclusion of youth. In partnership with the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity, we hosted the National Town Hall. This was a two-day event that allowed youth to critically engage with stakeholders from across Canada, informing solutions based on their lived experience and giving them the opportunity to be a part of the change that they would like to see. We're currently actively working on our State of Immigrant Youth report set to be released later this spring. And this is a body of research deep diving into existing literature on the immigrant youth demographic and exploring recommendations to facilitate additional interventions for these youth. So work integrated learning opportunities can be used as a solid foundation, and they can be a viable strategy to help facilitate long-term employment for immigrant youth and support the transition between post-secondary education and employment, and eventually support their financial independence. Several institutions provide an array of opportunities that include internships, cooperative education placements, apprenticeships, research assistantships, case challenges, hackathons, and other opportunities for students to connect their studies to their jobs. The opportunities provide students the benefit of workplace-related skills training and connections to employers that would bridge critical gaps in that education to professional experience transition. WILS may also be more tailored to a student's field of study and career pathway and can provide commensurate experiences with the increased likelihood of securing long-term employment post-graduation. Having certified work experience that is directly aligned with the student's area of interest would in turn build their confidence in their employability and ability to survive in increasingly competitive industries and sectors. Ultimately, students are able to gain tacit understanding of the employment landscape and determine which skills may be vital to the future of work in their field. Internships and placements could also be preferred than typical employment for certain immigrant youth demographics. For example, due to the nature of study permits, international students have a cap of 20 hours for off-campus work. Work-integrated learning opportunities offered through their schools or other institutions can provide an opportunity to obtain critical work experience that complements and does not disrupt their academic pursuits. We also know that, unfortunately, bias in favor of Canadian work experience still exists, and work-integrated learning programs provided through academic programming may provide students with that vital start. Providing youth with skills development, training, and networks by way of these unique programs can address and supplement learning gaps that may have been wrought by the pandemic. From pilot to practice. Here, I want to focus on spotlighting work-integrated learning opportunities as a long-term strategy and practice that builds additional pipelines to underutilized talent sources. I'll also be sharing some best practices that I've observed through my own experiences as an intern. So in keeping with the West mission of advancing the economic mobility of immigrants, we expanded this into a youth initiative strategy. So West hired 5 first and second generation immigrants as interns this past summer who worked on the Global Talent Bridge team and in finance and accounting, a cohort which I was a part of, as you can tell by my picture here on the screen. This helped provide an engaging and solutions-based model for work integrated learning, specifically targeting the immigrant youth demographic. At this point, I'm going to be speaking as an alumna of this program. So when I use we, I'm referring to our cohort. For 6 months, we were integrated as team members of the organization and assisting with critical work. I know that oftentimes when we think about internships or cooperative education, one might expect to be simply handling coffee or tea orders or photocopying and filing. However, this was not the case. We actively worked on key projects that contributed to the success of the organization and the communities that we serve. But beyond the support we provided through our employment, we were able to gain invaluable experience that moved beyond our positions at West. Guided by the expertise of senior colleagues, we were able to receive practical advice and insight in advancing our career development. We were able to see ourselves beyond our roles as interns or apprentices, and through representative leadership, we were able to see success and meaningful employment in action at every level of the corporate ladder. We know that hierarchy exists in most organizational structures, but I believe that the most inclusive employment environments affirm that regardless of title or rank, everyone is made to feel that their experiences and perspectives are valid. Similarly, throughout the internship experience, we were not only invited to simply have a seat at the table, but we helped set it. I believe that this is integral to building the confidence of any employee, and for a student, this reinforces their desire to engage and contribute. As youth coming from immigrant backgrounds, to then be working in a sector that is largely immigrant serving, we understood that our lived experiences would in some way intersect with the initiatives that we were working to support. However, through my experience, I can say that what works best is allowing youth to be engaged as stakeholders in the space, where strategies that would impact their communities are built with them and not simply for them. In addition to our in-house work integrated learning programming, Wes also participated in the Community Consulting Project, an initiative that you will learn a little bit more about from my colleagues at Ryerson, where Wes, the Business Career Hub at Ryerson, and leading consulting firms partnered to provide pro bono consulting support to nonprofit organizations in the immigrant serving sector. So just to highlight a few key takeaways, immigrant youth in Canada, despite their skills and accomplishments, have long been an undertapped talent pool. There is still work to be done, but we are seeing promise on the front of expanding opportunities and meaningful outcomes that would lead to sustained labor market integration for these youth. Just a quick reminder to pose your questions and comments for our Q&A session in the chat, and they will be addressed at the end of the presentations. Thank you very much. And if you're looking for more information or would like to connect, please see our contacts linked on this slide. Now over to my colleagues from the Ryerson Business Career Hub.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And I'm pleased to introduce Sarah Anderson and Prabpreet Basi from, as you mentioned, the Ryerson's Ted Rodgers School of Management Business Career Hub.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation, Teresa. Thank you so much for being here. So my name is Sarah Anderson. I'm a career consultant here at the Ted Rodgers School of Management at Ryerson University. Absolutely delighted to be a part of this speaker series. Today, we're going to be addressing the role of post-secondary institutions in international student and immigrant youth inclusion. And so we know that post-secondary education contributes to the social mobility and equality of opportunity in Canadian society. And throughout the presentation, we'll be addressing our topic through the lens of my role as a career consultant. And joining me on the stage today is Prab Bassi, a student at Ted Rodgers School of Management, who's going to be sharing a little bit more about his lived experience in relation to our topic. So before diving into the core of our presentation today, we wanted to share some information with you to provide some context into the population of the students that we serve. So we consider the school's location downtown Toronto as an advantage in the sense that our urban campus allows us to tap into the many diverse community pockets in and around the city, contributing to a population that is in many ways reflective of the diversity within the city that it calls home. We have students from over 140 different countries attending Ryerson University, and some of our top source countries for international students are Iran, India, China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Now, I want to address a few of the most common challenges that I come across in my day-to-day work with immigrant youth. Immigrant youth typically have little or less exposure to cultural norms and expectations in North America, both inside and outside of a workplace setting. Not to mention that many of these students are dealing with high levels of external pressure to perform, often coming from their families, and can stem from a discrepancy between their values from their home country and the new home that they call Canada. On top of that, these same students are also struggling with their own identities. Often I face conversations with students wondering if it would be more advantageous for them to Westernize their names to help improve the likelihood of receiving callbacks for interviews in the job application process. International students and students of diverse backgrounds, we know, tend to face higher levels of discrimination in their job search, with some employers stating preferences for Canadian experience, which we know is inherently biased and discriminatory. And much of our coaching in these situations is around how to navigate these complex and sensitive employment conversations. At the Business Career Hub, we have an amazing corporate partnerships team who are dedicated to building and growing relationships with industry professionals and employer partners with the goal of creating job opportunities for our students. Part of what this team is responsible for includes vetting our employers to ensure that their hiring practices are fair and equitable, and that they have the tools and resources needed to help support our students during their work placements. Another challenge that immigrant youth face is access to opportunity. Not all international students or immigrant youth have authorization to work in their home countries while they're students or until they reach a certain age, which can put them at a disadvantage in terms of level of experience based on access in comparison to our domestic students. Not to mention that the process to receive study or work permits is a long and complicated one, which can make the job search process even more daunting than it already is. With recent changes to legislation that directly impacts international students to access to work integrated learning, these changes have made it so that international students without a co-op work permit are limited to the number of hours that they can work off campus during a scheduled semester. And this reduces their access further to opportunities within the industry. Moving on, I'm going to share some information about how the Business Career Hub at Ted Rodgers supports immigrant youth inclusion. So the Business Career Hub at Todd Rodgers is a team of career professionals that's dedicated to the development and implementation of innovative programs and services that are designed to shape diverse business leaders. The role of a career consultant is to support students in our alumni community across various areas of career development, tailored to each student's individual needs or program specializations, and build partnerships that enhance career and skill development and generate experiential, educational, and employment opportunities. So on my screen, you can see a variety of the programs and services we offer our students, but the majority of my day-to-day is spent in one-on-one conversations or sessions with students, advising on topics including internship and new graduate opportunities, co-op applications, on-campus opportunities, as well as job search and career maintenance strategies based on research and analysis of data from employer feedback, learning outcomes, as well as workplace and career trends. So drawing on my day-to-day experience specific to the work that I do with students of diverse backgrounds, much of what we do is working to better equip these students with the tools necessary to conduct an effective job search, such as supporting them with business writing skills, providing them with techniques and strategies to create resumes and cover letters that meet North American standards, and preparing them for interviews by helping them communicate with confidence, and ultimately helping them tap into industry through strategies with networking and building connections. The next few slides that I'm going to go through will take us through a few specific programs that I wanted to highlight and how we support youth inclusion. So we invest in our student experience through a dedicated first-year transition program called Fit for Business. This program is designed to transform the student experience by empowering our students with a community that helps enable student success through targeted initiatives that encourage them to get involved outside of the classroom. So at the start of the year, students are grouped into what we call TED Packs, which are made up of 45 first-year students. And these groups serve to build a community of friends who are experiencing the same transition and challenges together. The program also creates opportunities for student leadership in that each TED Pack is led and facilitated by other first-year students who are there to help foster that sense of community and belonging. There's quite a bit of autonomy within these TED Packs because each group can decide how they'd like to interact with one another. And many groups tend to create group chats on social media like Discord and WhatsApp. And they also organize their own individual social events and study groups within their TED Packs. So this program has been especially important for immigrant youth and students of diverse backgrounds because they often have smaller support networks here in Canada, and especially during this period of time where they're starting their undergraduate journey in a virtual world. Next, I want to speak a little bit about Bootcamps. Bootcamps is one of the services we provide here, and it provides students with opportunities to continuously upgrade and enhance their technical and soft skills through industry and facilitator-led bootcamps. So these bootcamps were developed to provide students fast access into industry-relevant training designed to bridge the gap between core curriculum and the fast-paced implementation of technology in the workplace. Not only do these bootcamps allow for skill development, but they're facilitated by students, again, creating more opportunities for leadership on campus. When our students complete bootcamps, they're able to earn digital badges to showcase and validate the skills that they've learned through a digital credential. And starting this past fall in 2021, the Business Career Hub has partnered with Microsoft Canada to provide students with access to 2 Microsoft certifications by attending select bootcamp offerings. Next, I want to speak a little bit about our co-op program. So the co-op model has been designed in consultation with industry experts to help ensure that it meets the changing needs of today's business world. Ted Rodgers' co-op hiring process functions just like any other job application. It's a competitive process that prepares students to successfully conduct a job search after graduation. Before a student's on their first work term, they'll participate in a specialized preparatory program that includes modules on career readiness, self-assessment, professional competencies, and core technical skills. There are also aspects of peer mentoring throughout the preparatory program as well. We offer, through our co-op pathways, a unique set of pathways for both our students and employers, because in addition to the traditional 4-month co-op work terms, we also offer work terms that are up to 16 consecutive months in duration. We also have very, very strong relationships with our industry partners and are proud to work with large international organizations like Deloitte and IBM, to name a few, as well as providing students with global placement opportunities. The final program that I want to highlight today is an exciting new initiative that Teresa mentioned in her presentation that we launched this past September called the Community Consulting Project. This is something that we're really proud of, and it's an initiative where the Business Career Hub has partnered with World Education Services and 2 major consulting firms, including Deloitte and Accenture, to execute an 8-week-long consulting engagement designed for students from diverse backgrounds, specifically immigrant youth and international students. The engagement is intended to provide an early career intervention to support long-term labor market inclusion of immigrant youth. And the purpose of the engagement is to provide these students with an opportunity to analyze and solve a unique business problem posed by a client in the nonprofit sector and receive coaching and mentorship from analysts, managers, directors from those various consulting firms. So these students will practice utilizing and developing their skills in a safe and simulated work environment to give them the space to further develop their skills and allow opportunities to receive real-time feedback and coaching. And so I want to show a few stats related to our past 2 cohorts. So with a total of 43 student consultants and 8 unique nonprofit partners, many of which are already designed to support newcomers to Canada and marginalized populations. On this slide here, you can see a few notable pieces of data from our first two cohorts in terms of their background and demographics. And you can also see that 65% of our program participants indicated that they have no prior work experience before participating in the community consulting project. And they've cited that this program has helped their job searches because this experience helps them to become more attractive to employers, while also giving them the confidence that they have what it takes to be competitive in the workplace. Before ending our presentation, I'm going to pass things off to my colleague, Prab, and he can share his experience as a student.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, so much for that presentation. Just a little bit about myself. So I'm a first-generation Canadian. I'm a second-year student, and I've participated actively in different consulting projects, specifically the community consulting project. When I first came across it, it was through our school's newsletter. Our school does a great job of kind of accessing or showcasing their opportunities through this newsletter. So once I read the problem statement about how we'd work with nonprofit clients and specifically immigrant and refugee organizations, it was really interesting to me just based on my lived experience and my family history, as my parents came to Canada when they were relatively young, and they were not able to kind of scale up their skills and experiences that they got in their home country. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to work with some of these clients that worked on the immigrant and refugee experience and also integrating them into Canada. So initially when I applied, I really didn't know much about the program and the programming, but once I actually got into it, I was able to have a support network. So as Sarah mentioned, we had different analysts and managers that kind of spoke to us on a weekly basis and helped us through our different challenges and kind of gave us a platform to voice our own experiences and like our own thoughts on this specific problem. So it was not like very authoritarian in that way. It was like giving us a platform to speak and giving us a platform to work on this interesting problem. I've also had conversations with my different colleagues within my teams, and they've spoken about how the community consulting project really spoke to them as immigrants that have just come to Canada. They were able to work with organizations they didn't even know existed. So it kind of helped them in that way and kind of made them open their eyes about the access to resources. So I think the community consulting project is really important for first generation Canadians and immigrants, as it kind of ties in with like our own experiences and kind of scales up and helps build like a better Canada, while also allowing us to bridge the gap between our employment skills and also our in-class learning, as the in-class is not always applicable to what you're going to do on the job. So definitely in my time with the Business Career Hub and the Community Consulting Project, I could confidently say that I've learned a lot. And with that, I would like to pass it back to Tasha for our next presentation.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was great. It was great to hear about your personal experience as well. Next up, we have Denise Alejo from Empower Canada.
Thank you so much. Hello, I'm so glad to be joining everyone today on behalf of Empower Canada. My name is Denise Alejo, and I am also a first-generation immigrant, and I serve as Empower Canada's Senior Vice President of Programs and Partnerships. I'd like to firstly acknowledge the land on which I gathered today is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Empower Canada is a nonprofit organization that provides participants with free in-demand digital training and professional and personal development to connect them to new and rewarding careers. Our mission is to create pathways to economic prosperity to Canada's underserved youth and adults by launching them into meaningful and sustainable careers. We envision a diverse technology workforce where people from many cultural, gender, or socioeconomic backgrounds can succeed in our digital economy. We prioritize individuals from underserved groups such as racialized or immigrant job seekers. In 2014, after identifying a high youth unemployment rate, as well as a booming tech sector needing qualified individuals to fill entry-level roles, Empower Canada set out to connect those two groups. We strive to be the bridge between young people looking for support to find meaningful employment and employers who were struggling to find the job-ready, diverse talent that they were looking for. We began with a goal of serving 100 youth per year in the GTA, but very quickly surpassed that goal. We expanded across the GTA and also expanded nationally over the past 7 years, launching Alberta in 2019, Nova Scotia and British Columbia in 2021. Since our inception of 2014, one of our greatest strengths has been our partnerships with employers, which allows us to build programs that focus on skills that will be important in the workplace and ensure that our graduates are employment ready within those 15 weeks. As of 2021, more than 80% of our 22,910 alumni have secured in-demand tech jobs with industry leaders and partners such as Accenture, CGI, CIBC, Cisco, Deloitte, IBM, RBC, SoftChoice, TD, and TELUS. Our work-integrated learning approach that leverages employer relationships ensures that we cultivate a direct talent pipeline of qualified job seekers, which has allowed us to continuously meet employment targets, even with the economic fluctuations and disruptions such as those brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, 80.7% of our youth were racialized, 42% were Canadian newcomers, including permanent residents and refugees. These groups of job seekers faced unique barriers to employment, which were amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic. New Canadians come to Canada with a vision in mind, oftentimes with strong education and work experience, looking forward to new opportunities not available to them in their home country. However, upon arrival, the reality and red tape surrounding being an immigrant often sets in. Time and time again, we hear from young immigrants that they struggle to get callbacks to move forward in the interview process due to lack of Canadian experience. Animesh came to Canada in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in electronic and telecommunications engineering, but without Canadian experience, he was unable to land a job here. Through our program, he brushed up on his technical skills, but what really helped him focus was the focus on soft skills for personal and professional development that helped him understand the Canadian landscape. He landed his first role with RBC shortly after completing the program as a technical service analyst and slowly worked his way through promotions. Animesh now works as a manager at RBC. Glory arrived in Canada in 2017 as a refugee. To support her family, she applied to hundreds of jobs, but wasn't getting any callbacks. She enrolled in Empower Canada and acquired the in-demand tech skills and strengthened her communication, public speaking, and leadership skills. She landed her first role as a quality assurance analyst with CIBC just before graduating. Today, Gloria is the chair of our Alumni Advisory Council and works as a senior business system analyst at Scotiabank. What we're hearing from youth like Animesh and Glory is that when they arrive in Canada, despite their best efforts, they're not being successful in their job search. What is most frustrating is that they don't know where to turn and they feel stuck. We conducted interviews with and administered surveys to our alumni to better understand their journey. And we found that 70% of participants before Empower Canada felt stuck. We described it as a spin state. They felt that opportunities were passing them by and felt discouraged by their lack of progress, not knowing a way out of the spin state. This was true for both new Canadians and Canadian citizens. The fact that new Canadians often do not have the connections and the resources necessary to get them out of the spin state is one of the reasons we encourage immigrants to apply to our programs. Empower Canada is able to provide those connections that help job seekers get out of the spin state, providing a clear way forward to their future career and bridging the gap between job seekers and employers. Our employer partners provide input into curriculum design so that Empower Canada Canada programs match their hiring needs. They support program delivery through classroom visits. They host site tours, job opportunities for work-integrated learning, and provide individual mentorship to youth, all before finally recruiting talent from the program. We continue to engage both employers and alumni after hiring for a total of 5 years post-program completion for our alumni. The reason that we do this is so that we can gain insight into how our alumni are performing and can adjust our programs accordingly. By working closely with employer partners, industry council, and the board of directors, we're able to gain that real-time insight into talent gaps and needs of employers, thus allowing us to design our programs with the recommendations in mind and ensure our graduates are equipped with the skills employers are looking for. Working closely with employer partners when placing job seekers into the digital field is essential, as in-demand tech skills change so rapidly. A digital transformation that has only accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the benefit of work-integrated learning in our programs. They acquire the exact skills that will get them the job and help them keep that job. So an example of an employer we worked with closely in 2021 was CGI. So CGI is an information technology consultation company that helps other organizations accelerate the return on IT and business investments. To identify what skills were most important to CGI when hiring, we designed and implemented a skills-based assessment for our participants. Participants took the skills-based assessment, and those that performed well were put forward within CGI. By putting forward candidates that had successfully completed the skills-based assessment, we were assured that they would match CGI's needs and refine the selection process, allowing CGI more easily to hire our graduates that were the best fit for the roles, and our participants to be more competitive in gaining those roles. We first introduced the assessment with our May 2021 cohort, where 19 participants passed the skills-based assessment and were submitted to CGI. 6 were hired. After that initial hiring, we received feedback from CGI on which candidates had been successful, and we were able to adjust and refine our own curriculum so that it would align with what top tech employers are looking for. We learned that successful candidates were not necessarily those with the strongest tech backgrounds, but those that had some tech knowledge that was complemented by a well-rounded professional talent. The feedback allowed us to refine our own selection process to find potential candidates that could have previously been filtered out. We repeated the assessment for our September 2021 cohort, where 23 candidates were submitted to CGI and 12 were hired, which represents a 21% improvement on conversion rate. CGI also reaffirmed the importance of the holistic workforce development program. This is especially important now as the COVID-19 pandemic made it clear that every company is now a tech company and our graduates will enter a range of fields. Moreover, for immigrant job seekers who may already have some experience in tech from their home country, a 3-component model allows them to gain vital insight into professional skills expected of them in the Canadian workforce, thus providing that Canadian experience that they are lacking. No matter where they are starting from, which can vary from immigrant job seeker, we're getting them employment ready. We're getting them into an employment ready position. At Empower Canada, our programs incorporate 3 components: tech training, professional development, and personal development. For the tech training, we focus on micro-credentials, where participants become experts in a particular tech skill required in an entry-level role and it is growing in demand. The industry recognizes certifications they earn, act as evidence of their capabilities, and help build a national digital skills verification trust. Personal development, we guide participants in building their personal brand, and through personal development sessions, encourage them to showcase their talent to stand out even after employment, so they can begin growing their careers. Professional development, we also provide our participants with valuable professional skills, helping them to build their adaptability, problem-solving skills, and resilience. We focus on skills that are essential and valuable in all industries and roles. Part of being in a new country comes the need to meet new people, to see new places and find a new community to be part of. When immigrants join Empower Canada, they find a welcoming environment with other like-minded individuals working towards similar goals. As one of our alumni, Ruth, said, even my colleagues and other fellow students, we helped each other out. I knew no one when I came here, so I got a family and friends from the program. Additionally, our close relationships with partners means that they oftentimes visit classroom, volunteer their time, which means immigrants are able to form Canadian connections so vital to success in landing employment. We offer our participants 5 years of support post-program completion. This is specifically rewarding for immigrant job seekers who they have someone in their corner as they continue to navigate the workforce. Through having close relationships with our alumni and our employers gain access to a direct pipeline of custom trained talent at no cost. Recruitment agencies can be an expensive process, so the ability to trust that Empower Canada graduates have the skills needed to be successful in the workplace alleviates resources. With immigrants gaining Canadian experience and entering Canadian workforce, employers benefit from diversity of thought in workplace. When we reduce both unemployment rates and the number of vacant roles in our society, the community overall improves. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and I look forward to answering your questions in the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Denise. And speaking of the Q&A portion of the event, please do start or keep adding your questions to the Q&A box. And at the end, I'll collate them and start to pose them, but start thinking about them now. And because after our next presentation, we'll jump right into that session. But next up, we have Juanita Lee Garcia from Venture for Canada. So Juanita, I will pass the mic to you.
Thank you so much. I know we've all learned so much and so many incredible stats and programs, and I'm just awed by the work that we are all doing, and so privileged to be here with all of you today. Just as a reminder, these slides will be made available to folks afterwards, and I've also shared a link that you should have access to, which is a link to our 2021 impact report, which has a ton of data about the work that Venture for Canada does and did in 2021, and tells you more in depth about our programs, our processes, and our impact. But I'm here to speak to all of you today about emerging innovation, increasing youth representation, and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for joining us all today. And I'm really grateful to Wes and P2P for inviting VFC to speak, as well as grateful for the opportunity to share this space with the other folks that have presented. This is the last kind of presentation, but you're all cross-sector leaders who are driving innovation in policy and programs, institutions through advocacy and action. So really privileged to be here today. My name is Juanita Lee Garcia. I am a refugee migrant settler and a treaty person of Treaty 13 of 1805 and the Toronto Purchase. I am also first generation Canadian. I arrived in Canada in 2005, and I was lucky to finish my secondary studies here and begin my post-secondary education in Canada as a refugee, having graduated from a Canadian high school. After many years in academia, as well as working in retail to put myself through school, I ended up working an entry-level sales job at a startup while completing my second graduate degree. And even though I had over 9 years of work experience, from teaching at the university level to managing a $5 million retail store, I took this role because I understood that securing a job in an in-demand sector in Canada required that you do the job first before you can lead in that sector or be a part of that sector. And for a long time in Canada, we valued experience over transferable skills. character, potential, and coachability. Those are really hard things to hire for, and it's something that we're trying to tackle at VFC. I mentioned this because I see this as the main systemic challenge that immigrant youth face in Canada, in addition to youth from underserved communities, including low-income youth, Indigenous youth, and second-generation Canadians. I'm now really fortunate to work for an organization that values transferable skills and centers our values of inclusiveness, ambition, integrity, and curiosity in our hiring process, as well as in our work and how we also look for participants to be able to take advantage of the programs that we offer. Over the past 4 years in my role at Venture for Canada as Director of Strategic Partnerships and Marketing, I've been able to marry my passion for collaboration, revenue generation, innovation, education, and employability. And I'm able to show up knowing that my lived experience is valued. And that's what I think we all hope immigrant youth can do when they enter the workforce, and that employers value when they hire anyone. Today, I'm going to be talking about our work at Venture for Canada related to entrepreneurial skills development and some of the challenges and opportunities for youth that we've observed over the years, and how through cross-sector collaboration, we can increase immigrant youth participation in the Canadian labor market, especially in the labor market of small and medium-sized businesses, startups, and the entrepreneurial economy. For those unfamiliar with Venture for Canada, we are a national charity that fosters entrepreneurial skills and mindsets in young Canadians. We define being entrepreneurial as the ability and capacity to act upon opportunities to create values for others. In our programs, we recruit, train, and support young people under the age of 29 typically to work for innovative Canadian small and medium-sized businesses and startups. We currently have 3 programs, which I'll lightly touch on. And through these programs, participants develop the network, knowledge, and entrepreneurial skills to have more impactful careers. Very similarly to the past 3 kind of presentations, network, access to job and real world experience, and skills development is our fundamental ingredients to support youth entering the workforce. Our mission is to foster the entrepreneurial mindsets and skills of young Canadians with the vision that we will build a Canada where young people can equitably realize their entrepreneurial potential to build the most prosperous place in the world. In 2021, we partnered with over 1,000 small and medium-sized businesses from across Canada. We also partnered with over 200 post-secondary institutions, and were able to distribute $9 million in wage subsidy and project support that went directly into students' hands, as well as into students' hands, as well as supported recent graduates in our other program so that they could all gain work integrated learning opportunities. Over the past 8 years, we've also focused on increasing youth representation in entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems, and have tackled the following challenges and opportunities, and are still working on tackling the following challenges and opportunities, but also have identified the following solutions and recommendations. I'm going to talk a little bit about our 3 programs that we offer and how we weave work integrated learning, training related to entrepreneurial skills development, coachability or coaching to develop more coachable future employees, as well as the community building as kind of like the last ingredient of our programs. And then I'll talk about the challenges and opportunities we've observed, and then I'll dive into what we see as the next recommendations for the sector to take. And that, when I say the sector, I mean the social impact sector, as well as the startup and SME and innovation sector. So we offer 3 programs. Everyone here is familiar with internships. Unfortunately, this program isn't available to international students. We support 75% or up to 75% of the wage of a student to go work for a small and medium-sized business. And these students are interdisciplinary students. They don't have to be co-op eligible. The program does allow students who have co-op to fulfill that requirement, but we want to ensure that we are supporting our goals to have work integrated learning across every single graduate or undergraduate program opportunity. We also ensure that our students are getting paid living wages above the minimum $15 provincial guidelines, and that they also have access to the tools and resources that they need, including asynchronous and synchronous training, as well as communities where they can connect with each other and share what they are struggling with or what they're succeeding with at work. As you can see, we always focus on underrepresented groups, but this program in particular runs on a semester basis and is really focused on getting folks that hands-on work experience that we learned from the folks at Ryerson about being so critical to their ability to gain work afterwards. But our entrepreneurship program is a program that we launched in 2021, and it's actually an innovative take on work integrated learning, where we pay students directly to solve problems for over 7 weeks for SMEs. Students work together in groups and they tackle marketing, UX, operations, sales, research and development problems that small and medium-sized businesses are facing, and we pay the students directly. We pay students up to $1,200 to complete these projects, and they get access to a collaborative network, training resources that our Venture for Canada training team develops, as well as an opportunity to network and seek mentors at existing SMEs while they work on presenting real-world solutions. Our third program, which is our fellowship program, is actually a program for recent grads. This is the only current program that we have that's available for international students. And in this program, we partner with SMEs and startups where they hire our fellows. And the fellowship is really an immersive leadership and entrepreneurial development opportunity. We have a very competitive recruiting process where graduates from across Canada can apply to our program. They have to be within a 2-year window of having graduated or about to be graduating. And they participate in immersive training, leadership, coaching, mentorship, as well as resume building and employability building skills programming for up to a year or over a year. We are hosting our first in-person, fingers crossed, training camp, going back to that in this June. And these grads get to build a community amongst each other to be prepped to go into startup jobs, which is a really incredible opportunity for them to build a network, an interdisciplinary network of future Canadian entrepreneurial leaders. Our alumni have gone on to find billion-dollar businesses. They have gone on to become VPs of sales within 2 years of graduating at startups, as well as have founded their own social enterprises like video companies. And all of this info and who these folks are is in our impact report, which I highly encourage you to check out. These are just some of the folks that we have worked with over the years and some of the community building components of our fellowship training camp in particular. And the reason why I have this slide here is to kind of give you an idea of the faces of who participates in our programs. And the biggest kind of stories that we have about working with immigrant youth in our fellowship program has been their ability to apply to their PR because of their work through Venture for Canada and their ability to get connected to in-demand jobs with employers as part of their Venture for Canada fellowship. As one of the kind of opportunities or services that we provide to folks who are looking to kind of settle in Canada, we have gone above and beyond and done things like writing reference letters for their PR applications, as well as have created an alumni programming where folks are able to give back and develop other skill sets that they might not be getting in their jobs. So we have an alumni mentorship program where our alumni fellows mentor existing fellows, an alumni facilitator program where these folks are able to share what they've learned at work as facilitators and content creators And we do this by sharing or giving our platform to them so that they can continue to engage in emerging leadership opportunities. So the challenges that we've kind of witnessed over the last year, in general, it's a challenge for youth to get employment opportunities without previous work experience in the startup and entrepreneurship sector. Things like internships and co-ops help, but really without a network to connect them to the right opportunities, youth across Canada struggle. It's particularly more challenging to break into the innovation and entrepreneurial space for youth in general, and for immigrant youth, it can be an additional barrier because of the pace of the sector, the lack of resources that leaders have in the sector, and just the unstructured nature of entrepreneurship. Over the past 2 years, the pandemic has increased polarization of the economy and growth of inequity, and we've all witnessed this. There's continued challenges for all graduates and young people starting careers in virtual environments, and how we adapt to that while the Canadian labor market changes rapidly around us. The second challenge is Canadian experience. We've all kind of talked a little bit about the biases of what Canadian experience means, but how we see it at Venture for Canada is that Canadian experience is talking about the requirement or preference, intentional or not, that people applying for jobs have experience working in Canada or for a Canadian company, or that they fit within the Canadian cultural context. And that includes language and speaking requirements. Some employers that we've talked to put this in their job descriptions and often don't recognize this as being discriminatory or a bias, but in many cases, requiring Canadian experience is done covertly in the process and will require a lot of unlearning from the majority of our employers in Canada, so that we can shift from a culture of Canadian fit to a culture of like adding and belonging instead of assimilation. We've seen many examples of employers not necessarily mentioning that Canadian experience is needed in a job description, but saying that it would add more value. And we've also seen this in our fellows and other participants interviewing process with our partner SMEs, which is requiring specific Canadian soft skills that they're looking for. So use of expressions, or assuming that somebody has lived experience in Canada and looking for commonalities such as, having access to a cottage or knowing how to ski, or things that we often don't consider that immigrant youth might not have had access to before. And when we're talking about immigrant youth, we're particularly not talking about, in this case, or when people think of immigrant youth, we're not necessarily considering how, we've seen an influx of US graduates successfully working in Canada. We've also seen a lot of Canadian unicorns and startups expand to places like the UK and Australia, hiring teams locally in these places as part of their cultures. And so to us, this tells us that the trends that we see with immigrant youth actually are trends that happen with non-white immigrant youth. While that's a broad generalization, we do see that there is a correlation between youth that are people of color and immigrant youth that are not people of color. The last kind of challenge that we've seen is just the opportunity gap that exists in Canada. Canada's international student population has tripled over the past decade to over 642,000 international students living in Canada in 2019. And we've moved into being the third place globally in attracting international students, behind the US and Australia. In Canada, right now, there's over 900,000 jobs that need to be filled, and 99.8% of the Canadian companies are small to medium-sized enterprises. So we have this huge opportunity gap. On one hand, there's a huge shortage of workers, and this gap needs to be filled. On the other hand, there's immigration, where we're looking to bring up to 400,000 immigrants plus a year. And this will be something that we really need to take seriously immigrants will represent up to 90% of the labor force growth in Canada, but it can take them up to 5 to 10 years to become economically integrated for a multitude of reasons, including Canadian experience, and the recognition of things like diplomas, work experience locally, language proficiency, professional networks to find jobs in their area of expertise, and bias amongst employees. The folks at NSERC are doing an incredible job at shifting that for employers, but we need to continue to be persistent in helping employers understand some of the cycles that they are perpetuating. Opportunities. So a little bit more onto the positive side. Nearly 30% of Canadians who are working age population will be immigrants by 2036. So this gives us a good runway to ensure that we have a strong social fabric to include immigrant youth into our workforce. The opportunities that we've identified is entrepreneurial skills training and development support. So we do this through our programs, and we believe that entrepreneurial skills are the skills of the future to be able to adapt to rapidly changing labor markets. Skills like resiliency, lifelong learning, and self-awareness, self-efficacy, ability to mobilize resources are critical for the future of work and also for the future of prosperity of Canada's social, economic, and climate agenda. And to us, being entrepreneurial is multifaceted. The first thing is that being entrepreneurial doesn't mean that you have to be a founder. It just means that you have to have those skills and you're able to bring those skills into a company, and that those skills are valued so that we can innovate faster and better. We acknowledge that also immigrant youth already have a lot of those skills. They have to deal with high levels of ambiguity, have to take a lot of risk, have long-term ethical and sustainable thinking, and know how to leverage their resources because of their ability to move to a new country, not necessarily having a community and being able to build up those communities. Thirdly, we know networking, communication, and negotiation skills are often a challenge for any ambitious Canadian young person. And we need to have programs that focus on coaching and training folks for these specific skills and making sure that they have access to those skills and have access to the fourth kind of part, which is individualized or cohort-based coaching and support learning opportunities and wraparound services. The second opportunity that we've talked about a lot today has been giving work integrated learning opportunities, which was defined earlier, to everyone in Canada. It's super important for us to have these opportunities so that people aren't necessarily put into low-tier jobs, and that we can create highly ambitious youth that go into in-demand, high-paying jobs and introduce them to industries where they'll have opportunities to grow. And then the last kind of component is community building. Canadian youth are not in competition with immigrant youth. There's a huge opportunity to build community amongst immigrant youth, international students, and Canadian youth so that they have peer-to-peer learning, community and network building, and leadership development programs, which are key components of providing long-term leadership opportunities and for the future of our workforce. Lastly, our kind of big solution is a cross-sector leadership approach. We need to increase collaborations amongst organizations because we can't do it alone. Partnerships amongst government, nonprofit, big corporation, institutions, and SMEs is crucial for long-term systems change and how we value youth and immigrant youth lived experience. Our recommendations, I think my slides are here, they froze. These are kind of our 4 recommendations, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to all of you about these and answer some of the questions in the chat. I will pass it over back to, I think we're going into our moderating questions.
Yes.
But I can't see the Zoom, so I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen, and thank you all so much.
Thank you, Juanita. And I will jump right into the questions that we have. We've got a few so far. Please keep adding any as they come to mind. I've come prepared with a few myself. And just jumping right into one of potentially the most sensitive questions. And this is for Sarah. You mentioned that you get questions from students like, should I Westernize my name in an effort to increase the chances of callback for interviews? When you get that question, what is your advice?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tasha, and for the person who asked this question. I think my approach with this conversation, or when this comes up in conversations with students, is I try to take a stance of empowerment. I would never ask or advise a student or anyone to change their name. Your name is your identity. It's tied to your cultural background and so much more than just what we call you. So I would never ask someone to do that. If a student approached me and was to say, I'm thinking about doing this, of course, I would engage in that conversation and just say, okay, what is the benefit for you? Have you been feeling like you're being discriminated against because of that? And just kind of opening a dialogue and providing a space where we can talk about it. I also try to, when this conversation comes up, refer people to tools like on LinkedIn. On your profiles, you can now record your name so that you can get the pronunciation to help people feel a little bit more comfortable. If you do have a more ethnic or cultural name that Westernized individuals may not be as familiar with pronouncing, so that can help take a little bit of the I guess, intimidation out of it for us white folks who are not as familiar with those names. And I also make recommendations like you can include the phonetic pronunciation on your resume if that makes you feel more comfortable. But I would never outright ask someone to do that or advise someone to do that. It's always the decision of the individual.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for that very candid answer. And speaking of the students that are looking for advice, that are navigating the workforce, we're fortunate to have some lived experience on this panel from Prav, from Teresa. We heard from both of you about how much your work integrated learning experiences, what you learned from them, what they meant to you. I'm curious about if over and above that, have they impacted your career trajectories?
Right. So along that, I think Tasha's question had to do with lived experience and students that did start off in like work integrated learning opportunities and then eventually branching into our careers. Probably if you'd like to go first, like you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, for sure. I think like the social impact space, especially coming into it, like I really didn't know that you could do things like that, like where you can work with organizations. So definitely like the community consulting project, university consulting group, they both opened my eyes to somewhere I want to be in my career personally, like eventually. So going into it though, I really didn't know about these type of opportunities. Like I thought, okay, private sector is private sector, but there's actually crossover with like social groups and public sector. So it kind of opened my eyes in that way. And I see that it's attainable and it's something that I want to actually do. So for that reason, it's even more of an experience that I cherish in that way. So yeah, definitely for my career trajectory, it's helped in that way, just opening my eyes to different pathways. But Teresa, I don't know if you had something to add on to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've highlighted it as well in your presentation, and I definitely share those sentiments where it's like that idea of like social capital and having access to networks and knowing what resources are available for you. I can certainly speak as like being a child of immigrants and knowing that like your parents, the resources that they have, a lot of the networks that they have are held outside of Canada. And so for them, taking that risk, moving to a new country and essentially building it from the bottom, as a youth navigating the employment landscape, it can be kind of isolating and also like intimidating as well, because there is that feeling that you are kind of flying on your own in a way. But I think for me, it was really helpful knowing that I was able to build somewhat of foundation, and I am like a product of my parents' sacrifices, and I'm able to further contribute to like future generations, and knowing that the work that I do at Wes is able to help facilitate that access to these resources and services, and to ensure that these barriers are being alleviated for these communities. So it's definitely really meaningful to me.
Thank you. And so great to hear about what it looks like to be in those shoes. So thank you both very much. Juanita, we've got a few questions being thrown at you here about your outreach strategy to make sure that newcomer youth and international students learn about these opportunities. And, wondering as well about the percentage of students that are able to find jobs after their internships and other opportunities that your organization provides.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I'll address the first one. For our outreach strategy, we partner with post-secondaries across Canada. Like I mentioned, we have over 200 post-secondaries that we work with, and we post on different things. So we post on job boards. So we offer like our internship as a job on job boards. We have partnerships with student groups who will share all of our opportunities with their communities. So we partner with student leaders, student unions, student organizations, student-ran cultural groups. We also work a lot with organizations like Enactus or heritage groups at universities so that they can promote those opportunities directly. And we work with the student leaders directly on that, as well as with career centers, other employment support groups at universities, and professors, in addition to departments. So often we have that multifaceted strategy and connect with young people that way. In addition to specifically international students, if you have any ideas of how we can better connect with international students for our internship or for our fellowship program, I'd love to hear those. And then what percentage of students are able to secure jobs after these internships? So for both the internship and entrepreneurship program, we work with first, second, and third year students, in addition to working with fourth year students. So we don't measure the success of the program based on the people who are able to secure jobs, because we have interns repeat jobs in their first, second, and third year. We've been running the internship program since 2018, and we've seen interns actually try different internships throughout their careers. And that's a big part of those programs, which is just career orientation and being able to test different things. So we've seen interns in our impact report. You'll see an intern who has done a marketing internship 1 year or 1 semester, and then has tried an operations or UX internship another year. And we really value that career discovery component of our programs. People are able to, so how after these internships do they find, some folks do find jobs. I actually do have the stat of how many fourth year students who have interned gone on to become full-time employees. I don't know it off the top of my head, but if you send me a personal note, I can on LinkedIn, I can find that for you. We also measure the success of our internship and entrepreneurship program based on the fourth year or final year students that go into our fellowship program. So we really value that trajectory of having those folks explore work integrated learning opportunities with us, and then be more keen to go into the leadership and entrepreneurship skills development program that the fellowship offers.
All right, thank you very much, Juanita. And you finished us off right on time. It's 2:15. So I think everybody shared their email addresses, and also that these presentations will be online. So do feel free to reach out to any of us through whatever door necessary if you have further questions or would like to connect afterwards. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you to the organizers at P2P Canada. Thank you to all of my fellow presenters. And thanks to all of you, the participants, for taking some time out of your day to hear what we have to say. And we hope that you walked away with something that is beneficial to you and your work. Thanks so much. Take care and have a great day.